All right. Namaskaram. Really very happy to welcome you all to the first first webinar of Swasti Shri Webinar series. It was a great pleasure indeed to launch this event on the 17th of October evening when we all met, and we launched the event called Swasti Shri, which is a series of 12 webinars covering 12 topics, and for the upcoming 12 months. So in line with this program, today we are here launching or beginning with the first series. At this juncture, I also wish to again recollect and thank Dr. Mrs. Deepali Talang, who was our honorable chief guest for the launch event, right? And before we continue, I would also, like to mention again that the whole session is getting recorded. So please feel free to turn on your cameras, turn off your cameras based on the recording. I have also informed this right before the recording started. Now, you can also let me know of your willingness or objection during the meeting invite. Good. I started off without telling my name because it felt already this homely to be part of the Bhogya.online family and the Swasti Shri Webinar. But for those of us who still don't know me yet from the launch event, with my namaskaram again, I would like to share that my name is Sri Lakshmi Balasubramaniam, and for the first of this webinar series, I will be your moderator for the entire event. I take you through the event while our speakers share their expertise with us on the topics, plus also encourage your questions being shared across to the addressees, right? Throughout the session, you're free to share in your comments, your messages, your feedback on the chat window that you see on your Zoom screens. And while you do so, please leave your name and the city of your residence, just so to check how very relatable your messages and how best the answers also could be to your feedback or your questions. I think the rest of the rules are pretty straightforward. It was just about the recording, and feel free to really share your questions, your feedback, your comments, because this is a very safe environment to do so. And by sharing your comments, you would also then help others with their questions, and you could seek help yourselves, right? Let's also try and not try, let's definitely have a final Q&A session as well. All right. So so far then, we are still expecting quite a few people to join in. So again, the webinar series that we are starting off today with the first topic, which I will get to very briefly before handing over to the speakers, is for Indian expats, by Indian expats. So this is really to help every individual get acclimatized to the land and achieve their dreams in a comfortable way, right? And in each of these sessions, in each of these webinars, the speakers will share their expertise, their experiences in respective fields, and also we learn via the contributions they have been making to the community. Nonetheless, we will also try and learn from the challenges that they also faced initially while making themselves a name in their respective field, right? And how they turned all odds into their accomplishments and still going strong, right? With that then, very proud to announce the first of the webinar series, which is today covering the topic art and culture, right? Well, we all know that art is but the ultimate creative way of kind of expressing your thoughts. It's a way of self-expression, right? It can directly be your imagination or one of your experiences, but it's a way you express yourselves, right? It's It is about emotion, okay? And the connection between the artist and the audience is almost direct. And that's exactly what we achieve via art. Nonetheless, India itself, since time immemorial, has is known, has always been known as a land of art, culture, history, values, Vedic teachings, whatnot, right? And we really thought that this topic today is the most, the most closest way, or the most auspicious way to start off with the webinar series, right? And the where the we then have the the artists, the experts itself, presenting to us, how these various forms of art link the lives and the experiences here. And yeah, I can't wait to hear from them. With that note, let me quickly check if there are any questions on the chat window. None so far. And I hope I have already let everyone in. Good. So with that then, I'd like to welcome already, or introduce already, the first speaker. Dr. Rajesh Ramesh is a performer, choreographer, master teacher, certified Laban movement analyst, and a movement researcher. Born in Pune, raised in Mumbai and Bangalore, and living in Berlin, Germany since 1977, Dr. Rajeshri Ramesh looks back upon 5 decades of performing, teaching, lecturing, conducting workshops, and outreach programs. As one of the senior most dancers living in Europe, the uniqueness of her work lies in several decades of quest and explorations she brings into it. Today, it is a unique blend of her training in Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, and classical Carnatic music in India, and studies in the West in human movement from yoga and breathing therapy, middened off to certifications in Laban, or the Bartonave movement studies and holistic fascia training. Ma'am, there is already, a set of tongue twisters there, just in case I got some pronunciation wrong. Yeah, I'd more than be happy to learn the corrections from you. She's groomed several critically acclaimed dancers, also of European origin, at her academy, and conceived and choreographed many large stage productions with international artists in the last 25 years. Intrigued by the power and relevance of movement, she diverted her pioneering dance and movement approaches into academic research. Her doctoral research and movement emotions and cognition at the Europa University, Viadrina in Germany, has brought several groundbreaking insights. Well, that's quite a lot of details I know I shared with all of you, and trust me, this is a very concise snapshot that I had to prepare, but there are further details as well at www.rr-dance.net. With that, yeah, like I said, that's a very concise snapshot that I had to, really put ma'am's achievements in, at least a portion of it. But yeah, I'm so very happy to welcome you one more time, Doctor, to the first series of Swasti Shri, to the first webinar of the Swasti Shri series with this great topic of art and culture. Over to you, ma'am. We look forward to listen all that you've got to say to us today. So let me ask to unmute you, and perfect, it works. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sri Lakshmi, for this introduction. And I'm very, very happy to be here with you to share in as concise a manner as possible a long journey in relation to arts, and particularly arts across borders, and arts across times, arts across regions, arts across cultures, languages, etc. It is a very enriching experience that I would like to I am on video, so I think somebody is asking me to come on video. Are you all able to see me? Yeah, I'm on video. So, yeah, and then let me first wish the initiators of this series all the very best, and I feel honored to be the very first speaker of the very first webinar of the series that is going to start. And I wish the team all the very, very best, that this continues to enrich the viewers and everybody interested in these topics that are going to be presented. And I feel honored to be the first person to speak over here today, and try to bring in as much as I can. So my talk, of course, art is such a vast field. One can talk forever about it. I will try to just pick up a few points so that it fits into today's webinar and not overstretch it, because these things one keeps talking about it day after day and night after night and week after week and year after year. And whoever is learning from me gets to hear almost every class something about it. And those who know me know that yes, there is always a lot. And I'm myself completely a seeker. I will call myself a seeker, because I always say only when you get into the ocean, that is the art. One begins to understand the depth of it, and then one tries to find that depth. So this journey cannot be completed in one life. It cannot be completed just like that. It needs a lot of practice. So what is it that art has revealed to me in particular in its practice in Germany is something that I'll talk to you about. So when I came here in 1997 as a full-fledged dancer, I was told by people in India, I'm coming to a country of Indologists and Sanskrit scholars, and because the German Indologists were considered the experts in this field. So for me, it was quite an exciting thing to do that, because when I was in school and I was not allowed to change my second language from Hindi to Sanskrit, because it was introduced after I had already started Hindi as second language, and that was already too late. So if it was not for my dance and music, I would not have known about it, but I was always curious about it. So what happened, but then when I came here is it took some time for me to really get established, because the German regulations didn't allow me to become a self-employed artist at that time, nor have any employment for the first few years. So I had to wait till I had my first performance, I think in 1981. And then I was invited by the community college to start a class in classical Indian dance. And this was something very exciting for me, particularly when the course was booked out completely. And I said, oh my God, I'm going to have a class full of people who know about India and who know about Indian dance. And the very, very first question that I put forth in the very first 5 minutes of my first class, I realized that nobody knew anything about India, nor about Indian dance. And so that is when the journey began. And as the course continued, I had to, I was, of course, teaching in the typical way that we would do in India, learn the dance, get straight into the postures and do the basic steps called the Yadavus, and go straight into, that's how it used to be taught those days, with no exercises, nothing, and no precursors, but straight into the movements. And then at the end of the semester, I had only one student left. So that is when I really then began to realize that I can't just give 1:1. I can't put my body into their bodies and say what I can do, I can give it to the others. So this was the first lesson I learned, that there are going to be different body minds, and the bodies will not understand. So if I said, use the right hand and the left hand, and I would see that if I'm just showing some movement, people could not follow it visually. But even my instructions were not easy to follow. And it was also a time when Germany still didn't have much of dance as a art form. It was mostly dance, theater, and music, which Germany was known for. So what it taught me in the course of the time, and semester after semester, it was like that. I always had an overbooked course. The community college had to increase the number of maximum students. And I had people coming from all walks of life, all ages, all professions, all countries. And I had to put myself into their bodies and to make them feel, realize, if I could sit into the Aramandi, they couldn't sit into it. I had to first figure out what it was. So very early, I began to understand, yes, performing arts, what is the essence of performing arts as an art form? And now when I talk about performing arts as an art form, performing arts, as we know in India, Natya is the convergence of all the other kalas, all the other art forms. So it has literature, it has poetry, it has sculpture, it has all the other art forms, it has music in it. So it is an embodied form in the sense that I have to use my body, mind together to be able to do it. It's not enough to know that it is many thousands of years old, has a rich history, has a rich tradition, and is embedded in a culture which itself, the culture itself, has a very, very ancient history. So how can you bring such a loaded, as I call it a loaded art form and a loaded culture, because so much has already been said. We know so much already. There is so much written about it. There's so much analyzed. It is a shastra. It is not just a kala. That means it is a science already. This has been discussed and gone into treatises. And now all that was not going to help me start propagating this art. Of course, as a dancer, I could go on stage and I would say, my next item is going to be this and this and this. And I very quickly learned to translate the songs into German and present it with the gestures on stage, saying, the lotus-eyed went to the river to have a bath and things like that in German. And I noticed that people were beginning to like it very much. And I would get invited often because I could explain it like that. And then when I went on stage and danced it, they would understand it. So soon they started believing that if they don't understand my gestures and if they don't know the stories, they can't understand my dance. And this is a belief that still persists today. Whereas today I would say, okay, we should stop talking so much about the content because people feel overwhelmed and feel that they cannot understand the dance form if they don't know the stories, if they don't know the gestures. But dance is dance. It's a universal form. So people coming to learn from me, I was beginning to realize that they were coming to learn from me because of the love for the dance itself. They didn't know anything about India. They didn't know anything about its history and culture. But I was beginning to realize that if I gave them this embodied form, this movement itself, and make them begin to understand movement, then art as it is comes to them. And through that, they began to understand all the other, the contextual aspects of the art, the content itself, and things like that. So this is when all these experiences taught me to segregate. Today, I talk of the three as three different things: form, content, and context. So form can be defined by content and context, but form can go beyond content and context because it can take up any content and any context. This is the richness of the art tradition that has actually evolved in India, and that's why it has changed constantly, contextually, historically, embedded in whatever period of time, with whatever function dance and performing arts had. So arts as a creative discipline, how would we understand that? So 14 years of teaching at the community college was where I really built up a certain long and very, how would one say, very intimate and relationship of my own art form for myself as well, understanding the essence of it. And as the students over there began to then become more and more involved and began to realize that this is much richer and there is a lot around it, then they would start asking me to, if I would start Bharatanatyam classes, and they wanted to learn more than just coming semester for semester and learning the same thing. So sometime in 1989, I set up, or 88, I think it was, I got space for myself, which was a problem because we can't make noise. Our feet make a lot of noise. And I had to really move from place to place because neighbors would be very upset. The police would stand at the door because we were stamping around, and people would get very, very upset. And I would get some space for 6 months and I had to move out, go somewhere else. Then somebody else would be friendly enough to provide me their space. And then I would go there. And then they would, after 2 years, even they would start getting troubled. So this is a thesis that I could have also written my PhD on. This is a subject of its own. So moving from place to place and trying to get space and continuing classes, that was one side of the story when we are talking about challenges. So there was one, the challenge of teaching people who come from different walks of life. So I do not want to be an exclusive teacher who will teach only those who can do it. Then I don't have to be a teacher. I have to give it to whoever comes to me. And if this dance is the dance of Shiva, and Shiva dances in everybody, then there is more than making it culturally specific, historically specific. There is more to understand about the embodied art form that enables it to be accessible to everybody who wants to learn. So this has been, I think, one of my main journeys in the decades over here. As a performer, yes, I have been dancing since I was a year and a half old. Dance has been my life. Dance has been my passion. I was, I think, born to do it. And so my parents were forced to let me learn it because I just went and joined dance class without asking them. So dance has been like, for me, it has been my life. It is what everybody knows. My family knows it, my friends know it, and my students also know it, and people who know it, who know me. So for me, it was there always. But then how do I give it to people who come to me? How do I give it to my audiences when I stand in front of them and perform? I started doing what are today called thematic productions way back in the 90s itself. I would thematize something. First, it was the dance itself was thematized. Its history was thematized. That was my first performance, 1995, with my students, called Dance in Memorial. So I took it from the time of the Natya Shastra and presented. Then I had a choreographer friend of mine come here and we did her production called Sarvam Shivam. Then I did Moods and Rhythms. That was the starting of my dance company in 1996, where I encouraged young dancers who had completed their training in Germany to come and join me because I felt that they need a platform to present. And I had 15 musicians and 8 dancers. And we did something called Moods and Rhythms, where I presented the Navarasas, the moods, and the rhythms, and wrote detailed texts in German and about the themes so that the audience will follow us. So that was one part of the journey, doing thematic productions. The other was this learning, this teaching. So whoever came to me, how do I teach them? How do I give them? And one thing that I learned over the period of time was that art is something that needs to be practiced, sadhana. We all know that. It needs to be, only through sadhana you will understand it. You cannot talk about it. It can have a 5,000, 6,000 time immemorial history. It can have the culture it is embedded in, like our art forms, our Indian art form, a rich culture it has been embedded in, which has given a lot of knowledge to us already. Today, when I look at neuroscience, which I did in my doctoral research, I realized, what did we know in our Indian subcontinent about how the brain functions, that they knew implicitly what today brain research is talking about. Why is it that this art has been structured this way? Why are movements structured this way? Why has been Natya given such an important place as the convergence of all arts? Bharata says in the Natya Shastra, there is no art, craft, wisdom, or knowledge that is not in Natya. And he says, it brings solace to the downtrodden. It gives incentives to the people who need for life. It gives knowledge to the ignorant. It gives courage to the courageous. It gives energy, enthusiasm. To the knowledgeable, it gives also insights. So for everybody, whether you are suffering in life or you're profiting in life, it balances out. It gives everybody what each individual requires. And this has been said in the very first chapter of Natya Shastra itself. And this is something very, very beautiful. How do you understand it? Okay, to the sorrowful, it offers solace. It educates and enlightens the poor intellect. It offers entertainment to the affluent. Why only to the affluent? For everybody, actually, but it wanted to say, this is the kind of entertainment even affluent people need to have. It empowers the weak, and this is something I find very, very useful, and I have experienced it. It gives incentives of how to lead life. Yes, if we practice arts properly, it does. It is an intuitive way of learning how to lead life and so forth. So art is something that it is an embodied practice. In music, the teacher in India is going to teach you to refine every swara in its nuance and to sing it. Often I didn't hear what my music teacher was trying to correct me on that swara. The refinement of it. No, not so high, not so low, there, here. I would not hear it sometimes when he would sing it to me. But when he was satisfied when I sang the swara, I felt it inside my own self. It balances the insides. That is the kind of refinement that our culture has nurtured. This is what we need to be proud about. If you're talking about what is great, which is the subtitle of this webinar series, what is great? It is that refinement that comes with sadhana. It is the refinement that comes with practice. Don't talk about it if you're not practicing it. And don't be satisfied with what you're practicing until it goes really into you and settles down into you and gives you a deepened experience of what. And it can happen like this within a second. It can shift if you've reached that refinement in a movement. Why do dance teachers and masters in India, the strict good ones, they are not satisfied with what you're doing until it flows out of your body in grace, in precision. Yes, you need to know the laya and the rhythm of it. But why? To show off that you do great things, versatile things? No, it balances and grounds you. Laya grounds you. Whether in that is the musical aspect of dance. It is in you. That rhythm in you is grounded. The refinement of movement comes as you keep practicing and it settles down in you. This is the relevance of art. Art can be creative only if you've reached that level. It frees you. It frees your body. It frees your mind. It makes you free of all the shackles and restrictions that can be imposed on you. It can imposed by society, imposed by religion, imposed by culture, imposed by politics, imposed by family, imposed by, it could be so many. How do you learn to get beyond that, but still take all that along with you? So embodiment, today's understanding of definition of embodiment is body, mind, world interaction. So my body, not mind, body, brain interaction, which is happening in conjunction with my interaction with the world. It has never said it is you, your own self. You have to take care of yourself only. Even today's cognitive science says that. We are embedded in the world we are living in, now in time and space. Art teaches you to do that. I need to be now in my body when I'm doing something. Whether I'm singing, whether I'm painting, whether I'm sculpting, whether I'm dancing, whether I'm writing. I need to be now completely manaspurti, with my whole mind. And the mind doesn't come without the body. It starts in the body. It's the embodied mind. My body needs to be there. I need to be present in it. I can't do it as a symbolic act. Art cannot be symbolic. It needs to be authentic. It needs to go inside you. It needs to be part of you. And your own deep experiences are what get expressed. Yes, Sri Lakshmi said in the beginning, that self-realization that it gets expressed in the arts, what is that? The self-realization is not abstract. It is not a term out there, put out. Of course, our forefathers knew it all and they have told us all this. But are we practicing it today? How do we know? How do we take it now, this moment? And I say from the distant past into the future, it can only be in the present. And art teaches you to be present like that. Presence of mind, presence of body. My dance master used to scold, Buddhi ledu, you don't have buddhi. That means you need to put your buddhi, your intellect into it, your mind into it. Or I'll break your legs. That means you have to put your body, your legs into it. You need to know where your feet and hands are. You need to know exactly where each finger is. This is what I teach even my little children. So where's your little finger? And they'll all be standing like this. If they don't know where their little finger is, they'll be standing like this. That is presence. Then the big smile comes on their face. So art is something that frees you. Why? Because it takes your senses within and allows you to expand outwards and learn to live with the world you're living in. It makes you understand the world you're living in. It is not something to be put in a glass cage. Even as a performer, I cannot say I'm standing on stage and I don't care who is. I am the diva, I'm standing on stage. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to interact with your audience and feel, then you'll feel what the audience is giving you. And that goes into your art, whether it's a musician or a dancer. That engagement with the outside world is what makes me a better artist. And I then express it and make it understandable for the others. I open the eyes of others through my art. And that is what Natya was there for. So art is something that needs to be embodied first and foremost, in a true sense, to give you pure experience. This is a term that the brain scientist I was referring to uses. And I said, this is rasa, pure experience. You have to have that. Who has to have that pure experience? I can't say I'm going to give my audience that if I don't have it myself. So art is first of the artist. The artist has to understand the art before the artist can go out into the world and tell the world what art is about. that art itself will then speak.
Yeah.
This is something we have to keep in mind. However long our history is, however ancient our culture is, however much knowledge it gives us, it bogs down to that momentary experience that becomes pure experience. That kshana, that nano minute, that akshara, that syllable, anuve jagat, that atom that forms the world. And that is understood through art. And that is the relevance of art. And that is how we need to practice it as artists. And then we can give it to others. And the others will understand it. And then you can open the doors for the whole world to participate in your art, to get that experience of that art and get involved in it. Even if they don't become stage artists, people who come to learn from me, take the knowledge with them. And I've encouraged them to take it into whatever professions they're doing. Why? Because it can enrich all that. Only then art will get its proper relevance. And this is the essence of art that I have understood here, living in this country. It's not the challenges I talk about anymore. For some time, yes, it was. It was like running against walls, running against, wanting to get the space for it, wanting to get the opportunities for it. I'm not looking for opportunities anymore. I'm not asking for those stages that are not available anymore. It doesn't matter, because that art will never go out of me. And 30 years ago, I said that at 60, I will have the art with me. Because art is not something you put away into the cupboard. It's not a certificate. It is something you carry with you, and it'll reflect in everything you do. So having said this is going to be my final sentence. This is the relevance of art that I wanted to talk about today, which has helped me, which I began to understand when I stepped out from where I'm embedded in, where I'm cozy and taken care of and protected. No, I stepped out of that protection and allowed those challenges to come. And then the art became the most enriching, and art protects, dance protects. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, ma'am. I mean, this is this is so much to kind of take in, assimilate, and so as you spoke, it kept on culminating. It was like, okay, everything's coming up, and it turned into such a nice, I don't know, such a nice toy to to keep to oneself, all that you said. This is the closest, I don't know, this is the best of my expression of my simile comparison. I mean, you gave it like that. You added in, and then it finally became such a nice thing to to take away with. Thank you so much. And especially when you spoke about um, art inducing awareness, and putting us down in the present, and keeping us in the present. And yeah, well, if a commoner like me could make so much out of it, I think anyone with a slightest sense of art, slightest connection to art is able to make much more out of all that you said. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Keeping in view the time, I really wanted to have a Q&A immediately after your session. But I think, yeah, just keeping in line with the time, I'd already invite our second speaker as well, and then we do a combined Q&A at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So, well, like I said, let's keep up the mood. And when we talk of art, we're always talking of culture. I think these two are so interrelated, and yeah, always spoken of together. So with the same tone, then without taking too much time, I'm so proud to already welcome our second speaker. Yes, he's also joined, Sri Vasudevan Raghavan. Um, well, sir, before handing over to you, I'd again, give a brief about you. Like you said, I mean, not that you all need introduction, but just, just to set the context to everyone, I'm just giving these introductions. Well, Sri Vasudevan is a software professional living in Frankfurt and holds a BTech and an MBA degree. Born in Kumbakonam and brought up in Chennai, in a Sri Vaishnava family, Vasudevan had a fairly early initiation into the world of Itihasa and Puranas through his mother. He grew up reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahabharata, and other Puranas as his pastime reading. He and his wife founded the Parayanam Frankfurt Group, an initiative to chant the Sri Vishnu Sahasranamam and various other shlokas regularly. Later on, through his spiritual guru, Swami Paramathananda, Vasudevan was able to deepen his knowledge of the Vaidika Sampradayam, Advaita Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, Brahma Sutra, and other advanced granthas. He conducts online classes on various shlokas, Bhagavad Gita, Atmabodha, Tattvabodha, and Viveka Chudamani. Vasudevan has been conducting Ganesha Chaturthi celebrations as well as the annual Upakarma ceremony for a few years now. Moreover, Vasudevan facilitates the conduction of private functions such as Punyavachanam, Ayush Homam, Simantam, Griha Pravesham, Sudarshana Homam, Ganapati Homam, Satyanarayana Swami Puja, and other pujas as well. Well, with this, very, how should I say, I have met Sir very personally, and he gives such a warm, family kind of feeling. So proud, sir, to see you on stage in this channel, and very warm welcome to you, sir, to present to all of us your expertise in the area of culture. Over to you, sir.
So thank you, Sri Lakshmi, for your nice introduction. And let me get straight away into the topic. I've been asked to talk on culture. So in the course of my short speech, I'll try to define culture for the context of this program. And then I'll try to talk about what we are able to do under the current situation in practicing and living our culture, and what are the challenges and what can be done to improve the situation. So broadly speaking, these are the points I would be touching upon. And of course, as a part of this, it will also be emphasized as to why holding on to our cultural roots and cultural identity is a very essential part of our life. So I'll touch upon all these aspects to the extent possible, to the extent time permits. So just like how Dr. Rajeshri was able to give a very elaborate view of what art is and how it is to be practiced and so on. Culture is also similarly a very broad umbrella kind of word that can touch practically upon every aspect of our life, and sometimes we don't even consciously think about a particular part of our life being culturally influenced. Okay, so such simple things like the language that we speak, or the clothes that we wear, or the way we speak to each other, the way we address each other, the food that we eat. I hope I mentioned that before. So even such small things, they're all influenced by our culture. And so when we talk of culture, we have to talk about all of these things. And of course, if you're living in the country where you are culturally coming from, it's something that you learn by just observing how the others around you are doing it, and you just emulate it. But the challenge comes when you come to a foreign land which is not the cultural homeland for you, but you still have to follow the culture of your homeland. So you end up living two cultures in a day, or you live in two parallel cultures, so to speak, because inside the four walls of your home you follow a certain culture, but outside the four walls, when you go into the public, into the, just as you walk into the street, the whole culture changes. And it's not such a big challenge if you have grown up in your home country for 20, 30, 40 years, and then you move to another country for, say, earning or livelihood or whatever. The challenge becomes even more, shall we say, pronounced when you start raising a family in the adopted homeland, and in this case Germany, and then you have children who grow up more or less with no exposure to the culture of the homeland, except for a few weeks when you go out on vacation back to India. That is when, as a parent, you start feeling the challenge of, okay, so how do I imbibe my culture, our culture to our children? And I think that is when most people start thinking consciously about culture. Okay. Um, so let me start touching upon a few aspects of what I mentioned before, language. One of the challenges that Indian families face when they come to a place like Germany is that inside the house we may or may not actively speak our mother tongue. Okay. And very often, for small conveniences, we switch to talking either in English or German or some other language, sacrificing our mother tongue, with the result that after a few years, when the children grow up, the children are understanding. And I'm not just talking about speaking the mother tongue, but it's also about writing and reading the language, which is very important, because ultimately, when you talk of culture, it's a complete value system that we're talking about. And especially when we talk about Indian culture, it is a Vedic culture. And how is it different from other cultures? It is that the Vedic culture is predominantly a spiritual culture. And unlike the other civilizations which lay emphasis on, say, material success or other success indicators, that show you up in society, like some cultures value power, some cultures value physical strength, and so on. But in the Indian culture, because all our cultural values come from the Vedic philosophy, the Vedic framework, we have a lot of angle to everything that we do. So when I talk of value systems, for instance, how do you address elders? How do you address your parents? So in the Western world, it's very common for children to address the elders in singular. And for instance, in German, it's a du. Uh, Children calling the even teachers in the school as du is accepted, but that's a cultural no-no for us. And for us to explain why this is culturally important, it takes a lot of effort for us, to bring that message across to the children. And I've talked about the language. Yeah. Let's talk about the dress. Now we've come to a point where we hardly wear our traditional dress except on some festival days or some get-togethers. Okay. And to that extent, that if we were to wear our traditional dress and walk out on the street, I've heard a lot of people say that they feel shy to do it. Okay. This may not be the case for women, because the women are quite confident of going out in a sari or in a salwar kameez or whatever dress they choose. But of a traditional menswear, for instance, if I go out on a dhoti and kurta on the street, I'm fine with it. In fact, wearing tilak is also a cultural thing for us. And men folk wearing tilak and walking out on the street, you receive a lot of stares, and it takes a lot of confidence on our part to brave that out and still go out and talk to people. When somebody asks you a question, okay, what is that on your forehead, you have to be able to explain to them that this is part of a culture, this is part of a religion. Okay. And the next aspect of culture comes to performing puja or worship at home. Okay. Now, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, performing regular puja, regular worship is a very integral part of our culture. It is not just the special puja that you perform on certain festival days. It is also the regular puja that you do in the morning for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever time you take out. And that is a practice that is probably the first thing to be sacrificed once we move to a foreign country. And consciously practicing this puja aspect or worship aspect uh, gives a very strong message to our children that this is our culture and this is something that we should be proud of. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that a lot of things that we are quite used to doing back home are not so easily forthcoming to us when we transplant ourselves into a foreign country. And it takes a lot of conscious effort on our part not to let go of these small practices. You may say that these are all small practices, what's the big deal if I give it up? But then when a lot of small practices are given up, they ultimately add up to a very big you know um, cultural abandonment, I would say. I mean, it may sound like a big word, but ultimately that's what we are doing. We are abandoning our culture and we are somehow embracing a culture which is alien to us, alien to ours. And if we did that without really caring about the consequences, we will end up bringing up children who end up in a cultural no man's land. We will then have our children questioning, okay, what am I really? Am I a German? Am I supposed to act like a German, or am I supposed to act like an Indian? What is my true identity? So that imbibing that sense of identity not only in our children but also in us, because I've seen a lot of people who have lived in a foreign country for 20-30 years, and after those 30 years they have practically given up all indications of being an Indian, and they speak and act as though they are say an American or a British or a German. Okay. And that's not really the best way to do things. So I would say that how do you say, how do you ensure that we have this journey on a pleasant path? The first thing is we have to learn a lot about our own culture. After having interacted with a lot of Indian families and parents over the last, say, 10 or 15 years in Germany, I've come to realize that at least in the current crop of 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds, the awareness and knowledge of our own culture is not so strong. And so when our own knowledge and awareness of our own culture is not so strong, how do they transmit something to the next generation? That's very difficult, because at every generation, if there is a leakage of cultural knowledge, over a few generations it will eventually become zero. So what we have to do is, in the interest of keeping our culture and tradition alive for many more generations to come, it is in our own interest to learn and enhance the knowledge of our own culture and tradition. It's never too late to start. And even if you are 30 or 35 or 40, there is still scope for someone to start learning what exactly is our culture. And when I say culture, I'm not talking about some umbrella Indian culture that's followed from top, from Jammu to Kanyakumari. That's not the case. When we talk of Indian culture, it is in fact very diverse, and from district to district it could vary. From one state to state, it has a lot of variations, and even within the same state, it has a lot of variations. So what we should do is to learn what is our tradition, what is our family tradition, what is our parampara, and make sure that we know our parampara and transmit that to our children. And if we did that, we would still be able to have a very good collage of diverse cultures, but all having a certain unified structure at the top, namely that they all emanate from the Vedas and the Vedic traditions. Okay, the Vedic traditions are so flexible that at one level they talk about a great deal of uniform values and uniform shall we say symbolisms or rituals and so on. But these uniform rituals percolate down at the practical level into various um, diverse variations, and it is not expected that you learn about other variations. Let's first focus on learning our own tradition, our own family tradition, and know whatever family we come from, whatever guru parampara we come from. That has to be learned, and that has to be practiced, and that has to be transmitted. Okay, now what is good and what is to be improved? Whatever you can practice within the four walls of your house, more or less there is very few challenges. I would say that lighting a lamp or lighting an agarbatti is not a challenge. Of course, there are smoke detectors in the house, and it may create some noise if you have an agarbatti. But I'm sure we can keep the smoke detectors under control by wrapping something or whatever. You can disable them. uh, I find that the challenges when we have to perform something like a havan or homam, sometimes the neighbors could object. So we may have to take some special permission from the Hausverwaltung or whatever. That is where sometimes, not always, sometimes we seem to have a challenge. Then we've been conducting Parayanam as a gathering. So we meet in some families' house on a weekly basis. It's on a rotational basis, and then we chant. Sometimes we have 20 or 30 or 40 people in the room, and we all chant. And 40 people chanting can be a very loud noise, and sometimes the neighbors get disturbed. And once or twice we have had the experience of the police being called and all that. Okay, I think that's also manageable, because if you in so and so hours we're going to have a lot of noise. Please bear with us. Most neighbors are quite understanding. But I think the challenge what we face very often on what we can do outside the four walls of a house, and very often it's a very slow and gradual change that we have to bring out in the society. For instance, I have personally felt that not being able to burst firecrackers on Diwali, as a festival, has been a pain point for me. For me, firecrackers are an integral, we may be hearing in the last few years in the media and all that. Diwali and firecrackers go together, no doubts about it, no two ways about it. But unfortunately, in a place like Germany, firecrackers, and I've heard a few instances where a community celebration has happened with firecrackers, where special police permission was taken and crackers were allowed in a particular confined area. That's probably a possibility, but that again calls for some amount of community cooperation, getting in touch with the appropriate amt and getting the appropriate erlaubnis and whatever. It could be the Polizei, it could be some Sicherheitsamt, I don't know. I think that we need to sensitize the authorities that there are so many Hindus in India, I mean in Germany, and it is a part of their culture. And if we can sensitize at the sort of cities with multiple amt, where I think these kind of issues can be taken up, that's something where we have to make progress. Of course, celebrating public celebration of Holi in the last few years, and Holi is probably not such a difficult thing. In the last few years, Navaratri, but this is also more like a festival that we celebrate inside the house. And I know for a fact that the Rhine-Main Bengali Association has been celebrating Durga Puja now for almost 25 years, and they do it as a public event, and they have a grand Durga idol for which they perform 5 days of puja. They do havan in a Salbau hall, and they do a Visarjan. They've been doing it in a grand manner for at least 25 years. We can take a leaf from their notebook and see how we can organize others, public festivals, which can be celebrated together. We have been performing Ganesh Chaturthi now for almost 12 years. We have been lucky enough to find common premises there. We can gather some 200 people or 250 people, perform a grand puja with Abhishek and Havan, and then offer a grand feast at the end of the puja. So to whatever little extent we have been able to organize these celebrations and festivals, we have been managing to do it, but I'm very sure that a lot more can be done. And at a personal level, I've been trying to teach Bhagavad Gita and a lot of other scriptures and shlokas, so that at least the individuals with whom we are interacting, their awareness about what is our culture, what is our religion, whether you like it or not, Hinduism is a very, very complex framework. Just like Rajeshri ji said, that our Indian arts are so heavy, and it has content, it has context, and it has form. In exactly the same way, the Indian religion not only has its physical form in the form of rituals, it has a very heavy symbolic and philosophical groundwork that goes to it. And to complicate things, you have multiple schools of thought. So broadly speaking, you have the Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, which most people are not even aware of. And within the Vedanta school itself, we have the Advaita, Visishta Advaita, and Dvaita. And with so many variations, it can be really confusing. And so you have to start somewhere and start learning what is it about our religion, because religion is very much a part of our culture. And without knowing about religion, you cannot really talk about the cultural values and so on. So I have just broadly touched upon most of these elements at a very peripheral level. We can actually talk for hours together on the greatness of our culture and how we can work together to enhance our own understanding and knowledge of our culture. But in the interest of time, I'll stop my speech here, and I request the moderator to open up for question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vasu sir. Thank you so much. As always, such a comprehensive speech that was, touching upon various aspects of how culture, is or could be part of our everyday life here in Germany. Like I said, there are challenges, but I think it's, for me personally, it's also more, I mean, like I said, I'm no expert like you, but for me, culture is also, a way of life as well. It comes in everything. It comes in, the language we use, the tone we use, the interaction we have with people, everything. I think together, culture becomes a way of life. And of course, so I, personally, I try to imbibe it wherever possible into my daily life. But yeah, like you said, for the various activities, cultural activities, there are its own challenges when we do it away from our homeland. But yeah, like you said, there are ways around. There are if properly planned, I think the challenges can be overcome as well. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot. Well, with that, we are through with. There are a few comments as well. I'll just come to it in a bit. So, like I said, we didn't have the Q&A session separately after the first topic was presented. Now that we have completed both topics, I'd really open the floor for the questions. So, audience, please feel free to write in your questions in the chat. Please be so kind to give us your name in the message you type in the chat. Also, feel free to just turn on your video and speak to the speakers yourself and ask your questions yourselves too. So yeah, with that, I set the floor open for question answers. While you're all thinking of the questions, while you're thinking of the questions, I'd also quickly go through the chat here to see if there are comments and questions. Yeah, there is the first one from Anusha N. Shastri to ma'am after her speech. She compliments ma'am saying, "Thank you so much for this enriching talk, ma'am." Thank you once again, ma'am. And thanks, Anusha, for leaving that comment. Subhashini Bhaskar, beautiful. Thank you, ma'am. Don't talk until you practice was a great tip for the day. Of course, yes, ma'am said that, and that was definitely a good one. Thank you so much, Subhashini, for your message. Geeta writes, such an inspiring and uplifting experience to listen to you. Of course, yes. Yeah, thank you so much, Geeta, for leaving that message. Truly inspiring and uplifting to, listen to both these speakers today. Subhashini Bhaskar, to sir as well. Thank you very much, sir. Culture is something that should be practiced. So was the speech. Highly practical to the elements chosen. Thank you. Thank you so much. So are there other questions as well to either of the speakers? Probably I'd just be a bit greedy and start off with questions. I have at least one for each. I mean, I really have more, at least 2 or 3 for each of you. But yeah, constrained by the time, I think we should be good to close in another 5 minutes. But so my first question to ma'am. Ma'am, needless to say, you were expressive while talking. This is on a lighter note. What do you do if you're angry? Would you still be expressive with all your, gestures, or just say it straight? What do you do if you're angry, ma'am? You muted, ma'am. Let me ask to unmute you.
Yeah, now I'm unmuted. Yeah, firstly, in Germany, I learned to be straightforward because Germans are like that. It's not that they're angry or rude when they're straightforward, but I like the German way of saying things to the point so that the other person always knows where you're standing and what your stance is. And it need not be something to start a strife or anything like that. And it makes things easy because you're always at a very clear level. You have the cards on the table, as I say. Yes, my students will know what anger is because I can then really shout, because if I'm saying something for the 10th time and I want them to learn to focus and concentrate and remember and get their art better, especially at the advanced levels, then they will get to see me also get angry. Yes, I use my language for it. I wouldn't throw around tantrums or throw my fists around. That I would do only if I'm expressing anger and raudra on stage, and I can get really mad, and I open my eyes and I do all that needs to be done. Especially when I have to do the angry goddess and the Durga. That is where I really show my raudra or Narsimha, because I find that those are, like I said, art freeze. And so when I show that emotion in that anger, in that moment, which is justified, then it feels like, yes, I have also got rid of something by expressing the emotion. You said something about a tool, a toy. Yes, it is a play. And even life should become like that. So yes, all gestures are used. And of course, my German counterparts do see a lot of expressions on my face, probably because it's not you, one is not used to it. But that is how we are. And the moment you start expressing yourself the way you are, then all these expressions do come.
Right. After all, anger is also one of the rasas. So
and it's
you
a
have to
rasa,
express.
and that rasa is important, not the affect anger. It's the rasa. That means rasa has already taken you beyond the emotion, and it has allowed you to understand it because you feel how it feels, and then you know how to modulate and regulate it.
Right. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Like I said, I have more questions, but yeah, I'd hope I get fortunate to listen to you or speak with you in another time. And yeah, I save my questions for that part then. So
Sure, I'll be
yeah,
happy.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, sir, about culture. So this is also, something that I've seen. People feeling a bit shy to say open up on what bindi is what, but on the other side, what I have experienced myself is when I wear the kunkuma, the bindi, we call it kunkuma, um, and the people outsiders ask, if I give them the explanation on why I'm wearing it, they are actually interested. They tend to they show respect towards it. They are amused. They show respect towards it. But on the other side, also what I see is, and this I want you to, I would request you to, kind of advise, sir. Um, People are struggling with this identity crisis. I mean, they don't know where to identify themselves to. Either, completely become, completely align themselves to the culture here because they live here, which is very important, or stick stick to the roots, which is practically, impossible in a lot of occasions, like you said, unless there are, other plans and arrangements made. So which way should one, choose to overcome this identity crisis, or is it just to, have the best of both worlds? What is it that one could do?
If I understood your question right, let me try to reframe it in my own words. So you say that
Yep.
there is this problem of following two different cultures, and you cannot follow the home culture outside 100%. So how do you get a
Mm,
balance? Is that what you're trying to ask?
exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely,
Okay.
yes.
So so there are some hard boundaries. Like you cannot walk into your office or a customer meeting in a panche. Okay. So you have to wear the proper Western dress, and you
Mm,
cannot go in a kurta dhoti to the customer meeting. That's a strict no-no. Where it comes to the official work, the official life, there I think we don't have a choice. We have to follow the local culture, which is in Germany is the German culture. Even in India, if you're working in India and if you have a customer visiting you, let's say a Western customer visiting you, you do show up at the office with a coat and tie and all that. Okay, so that is part of the business routine. But
yeah.
I think outside of the office business life, I think we have a lot of flexibility in Germany as to how much of our own culture we can follow. uh, Unlike in some other countries where there are clear restrictions on how you can dress, especially for the women. I'm not naming the countries, but there are some countries where the women are restricted from showing up in particular dresses and so on. Unlike that, the German culture is a democratic and free society culture where the women and the men can wear whatever they want when they go out. So it is our own inner freedom as to how
Mm,
much of our Indianness that we want to display to the world that stops us.
yeah. Okay, we hear,
I
and
really
yeah.
don't have a problem to meet German colleagues. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
can
Okay.
hear you now, sir. Please go on.
So
Yeah.
I make it a point to sport a tilak when I'm in Germany, even at the office, even at the
Yeah.
customers' meetings. I go with a tilak. That's part of my identity. Okay, so that is the basic minimum I think I can do to announce my Indianness and my Hindu-ness. And if it is nothing to do with the official business meetings,
Yeah.
I try to, weather permitting, of course, weather permitting, I try to come out in as much of an Indian costume as possible. So
Mm,
I'm not always going around in jeans and t-shirt. So as I said, it is how comfortable you are about proclaiming your Indian and Hindu identity. And if you
exactly.
are
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
confident and proud of being a Hindu and Indian, then you will not bother about what the others would think about your dress or whatever. Yeah. And I think that is where most of us have to work ourselves up and create that confidence and pride in us that, being a Hindu is nothing to be ashamed of, and being a Hindu is actually something that one has to be extremely proud of. And we have a lot of positive things to show and teach the world. And if we are not able to do it, it's probably because we ourselves are, are not adequate in that. So we strengthen ourselves first, and then we try to transmit that to whoever is interested in learning. Yeah. So I'll just stop there with the answer.
No, I think that already answered it. It boils down to what how proud and comfortable you are in displaying what you want to. Yeah, I think that's perfect. Well said. Thank you so much. Here in the chat we have, well, people don't want the session to end, do they? I mean, we are over board time, but I see the questions coming in, which is very encouraging though. Thank you. So Suganya asks, are we lucky enough to see a few of your abhinayas now? So since she mentions abhinayas, I think the question is directly to Dr. Rajesh Shri Ramesh. So yeah, is Suganya lucky enough, ma'am, now to see your abhinayas?
At the end of the session, yes, I'll show you some if you want to hang on.
Perfect. Super. So let's save the best to the last. Yeah, best for the last, and we get back to that. There's another question. So Suganya, please stay on till the end and you get to see a few abhinayas. Malati asks, what is the most important aspect your non-Indian disciples seek by learning the classical Indian dance? My question to Dr. Rajeshri. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm asked that often. And I spoke about it recently, also when I held the keynote speech at the symposium of the of the German Dance Association. So why do they come? They come because they want to learn something new. Sometimes they have seen Indian dance on stage and they are fascinated by the richness of the form and they want to learn it. Because the way our aesthetics have evolved in our art form, as I was telling you earlier, the very essence of art becomes relevant in those aesthetics that have evolved. Yes, they have evolved with our culture, with our understanding, with the Vedic knowledge that we have, etc., etc. But finally, what boils down to it is, what is it that makes it so rich that it takes you to that level? It is supposed to take you to that level beyond the senses. The essence of Paramatma, as I was told by a Vedic scholar, is stillness. The Ananda Tandava, when does that come? When you go beyond that movement. And I think when the artist enables that, there is something that springs over even to a layman audience. It touches them somewhere. And they see that it is something light. Of course, it's not light for the artist who's performing. It needs lots of years of sadhana. But then finally it comes to that grace, that sensitivity, that expression, that precision, everything that goes into creativity in the arts, the stories behind it, the narratives. Why do we have the narratives that we have? We are not talking about everyday problems in our stories. We are going beyond that. And in order to depict that beyond, the artist also has to go beyond something, beyond the everyday, beyond everything actually, finally. And so they get drawn to these things. So if they've seen a performance and they feel there is something that they want to know, they'll land up next day in my class and want to learn it. Others have not seen a performance. They've heard about it from a friend, or they have read Indian classical dance, and then they come. And then the journey begins. And the journey begins for many like that. And as they continue to learn the art and begin to become aware of it in their bodies, that is when I notice that they stay with it. You give them, and I give them really the stuff that goes into the technique. They have to sit in the Aramandi, they have to do their Natya Ramba. All these are technical terms especially in Bharatanatyam. They have to do all that. Then the expressive elements come, showing emotions and all that. So as they slowly grow into it and they start feeling it in the body, they are convinced. It is a universal form, finally, which is made for the human being, the human culture. And once that becomes clear, that is what draws them. So finally, there is a joy that comes. There's a curiosity that comes. And then they see somebody else who's gone beyond and they want to also reach that level. All this comes. So I myself have experienced that what the people who come to me is, they want that real essence. I have to prod them sometimes onto stage. And I say, okay, you're ready now, and I can put you in front of the audience. Because to put people in front of the audience, we have a duty towards our audience. We have to present it properly. So it takes a very long time before I allow anybody to go on stage in my case, and I'm known for that. So, but they don't want to go on stage. They learn it for the sake of the art, for the sake of the experience it gives. And that is, I think, something very, very important that I find particularly in my non-Indian students.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's so pure, right? That they seek the art itself. They do it for the art. That's extremely pure. That's so nice. And as you said, I was also thinking when you said, it's something that a layman also connects to. That's why we have so many forms of folk art as well, right? It connects directly to the commoners. The narratives there, the stories being told. They directly connect so much, the folk art forms.
Absolutely. And coming back to even the cultural values and how we keep them and imbibe them, and having lived in Germany for 44 years now, almost next month, I can only say, and I've raised 2 children over here, and they have spoken German from the beginning at home, and but also got to know about India, know the art. The arts themselves can be a stepping stone to understanding the culture and the values. Absolutely. More than anything else, the values behind it. It is the values that are so rich. What is it? It starts from non-violence and it goes on. The very word shanti, peace, the very understanding of arriving at something that is deep within is so much of our Indian culture and understanding. And art gives them that. So many of my non-Indian students have become more Indian than anybody else.
To say that
through the art, through the dance.
Through the art. Yeah.
So even if I don't teach them, because I know that in the very beginning I learned I cannot force my students to behave like I'm a guru. I can't do anything. I can't expect them to come and touch my feet. I can't expect them to come in a training sari and with bindis on their forehead. But over the time, they themselves start doing it. And this is what I've found so enriching.
Right.
It is their own free choice, finally. And then they come and touch my feet. Sometimes it's on the day of the Arangetram. And then I know that they have gained respect for it. And they've understood the value of it. Yeah. So
that's
both
so
go hand in hand,
Exactly. Art, they all go hand in hand. And like you said, art, culture, and they complement each other. You really cannot talk about one thing and not talk about the other thing. Absolutely. Yeah. That's so fulfilling for you as well to see, when they perform and, the audience is, the art is then being flown to the audience. That's wonderful.
And people don't see that they're non-Indians. They don't see that they're non-Indians. They're standing there and the costume sits perfectly on them if they dance well. And then
exactly.
everything, blonde hair, but then bindi, full jewelry and everything. And nobody sees the non-Indianness anymore.
Exactly. Right.
And that makes, and that is for me the essence of our culture, that it allows that universality to grow and allow the people to be part of it. I can allow others to be part of it. And then it becomes easy even for us to live our culture because we
True,
are
true.
embedded in it. We know it, and it empowers me as a
Yes,
individual, and then others begin to see it, and then they'll come and ask you,
exactly.
what is so different about you? What is so different about your daughter? She likes to paint flowers. I see Indianness in her. They come and tell me that. I didn't teach my daughter to do that, but something is there in her that she does it. So these things matter, and then you become embedded in what you are doing, and then you can go out and they will accept you for who you are, and
Absolutely.
they
Yeah,
will
yeah.
become
So
part of
like,
your life. They'll become part of your life.
true. True, 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 true. Very well said. And yeah, this is so connected. Vasu sir was absolutely telling the same. You know, it's
Absolutely.
on you how much you want to show up, how much you want to,
How much
you
you
want the Indian
embody
dress
it.
to come out.
Mhm, mhm,
Exactly,
mhm,
exactly. So yeah, like I
mhm.
said, it's so interrelated. What Vasu sir says, what you say. So that's how art and culture go hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So before I really move on to the vote of thanks and the abhinayas, let me quickly give you a piece of important information about the upcoming series. We are very way over time, so let me give this information about the upcoming webinar. So the upcoming webinar is on food and festivities. It's a connection, right? Art, culture, and then we move on to food and festivities. So this is the upcoming webinar, and this would be on importance of traditional nutrition culture for Indian women and children living abroad. This hence covers up what the basic concept of nutrition is, cultural aspects around nutrition during festivals, rituals, celebrations, associated folklores like folk songs, folk stories, proverbs, etc., and why it is so important to connect with our roots to be healthy and fit. So these are the pointers about the topic for the upcoming webinar, which is food and festivities. Keep track of the dates, the timings. Of course, it's already known. We have the schedule already well planned, and uh, we know that it's on the Sundays evening. But yeah, keep track on the webinar directly on the website itself, Bhogya.online.com. And of course, please register. And yeah, let's keep meeting in great numbers to share and these experiences and have a nice time together. So with that, we are through with what I had on the agenda, and I can formally now open to the vote of thanks. Well, before that, Doctor, do you want to show the Abhinayas after the vote of thanks, or I could already I could
Whichever,
already
however, I think I'll do it before the vote of thanks so that you have the final word.
perfect.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I'll be happy to do that. But of course, everything can become very long the moment I start elaborating on something. So I will
yeah.
ask Suganya to tell me what she wants me to show so that it makes it easier before I go into an elaborate Navarasal.
Exactly. So let's pick Abhinaya for one of the rasas. Suganya, do you have a preference?
And you can all show yourself so that I know who the audience is who's sitting in front of me.
Suganya, if you don't say anything, I'd be, quick enough to grab and, ask for one of the rasas of my choice.
Yes, Suganya couldn't unmute, she says, but you can write it in the chat.
Right. Probably, yeah, Suganya, can you unmute yourself now? Yeah, your choice, please. Okay. But I think you're also, I have asked you to unmute. So if you want, feel free to speak as well.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And
Yeah.
doctor, yeah, I doesn't have any particular choice, but anything.
Sure. Okay. Then perhaps Adbhuta.
Sindho Giri Stapane Navarasa. Rama is having Adbhuta seeing the Sindhagiri.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
much.
And, oh, yeah, wonderful. Oh,
So
yeah.
nice.
Subhashini now writes in Karunya.
Karun Bali Bhojane.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. This can go on and on and on and on for the rest of the evening. But like I said, I mean, yeah, this uh, the vote of thanks is honestly, yeah. I mean, I always do it from the heart. You know, whatever I do, I mean it when I say thank you and I say sorry. But yeah, today's thank you is really so special. Thank you so much, first of all, to the great speakers we had today, Sir Vasudevan and Dr. Rajesh Shri Ramesh. Thank you both so much. Wonderful is an understatement. This was an experience in itself to simply listen to both of you talk. Thank you so much. We really hope that you join us for sessions in future as well. And you know, in fact, I'd say the other way around. We'd be fortunate enough to join you in some future session too. Thank you so much for making time for us today. Manati, I've thanked you multiple times, a very a fond friend of mine, Malati. Thank you so much for this initiative at the first place, and a great start, I would say, today with the first webinar, and hope we see, you know, a fruitful webinars throughout the series. Swasti Shri. Thank you so much, Malati. And the audience, well, Geeta, you turned on your camera again. Thank you. Able to see you and happy to see you too. The others, that's totally fine as well. We are happy that all of you participated on camera, off camera. It's totally, yeah, your personal choice. But we'd really like to see each other at least virtually and connect, you know, in a more effective way, to the best possible extent, though we are doing it virtually. So thank you so much, audience, for participating. Ah, well, there you go. Premalata, thank you so much. Thank you. Wonderful. Hello, Subhashini. Hi. Hello. Thank you. Well, that's so nice to see all of you. And yeah, thanks for your messages coming in. Amazing. Subhashini says, wonderful. Malti, absolutely unique. Geeta, thank you all so much for your feedback. So needless to say, as I say thank you, I'd also take it as an assurance that all of you will join us for the upcoming series as well, for the upcoming webinars as well throughout the series. Please closely follow up the details on the portal itself. Let me repeat the website address. It is Bhogya.online. Kindly follow up Bhogya.online, register yourselves for the upcoming webinars as well, and stay connected with the social media channels of Bhogya.online as well. Thank you all so much for participating today. Looking forward to meet you all again. Namaskaram.